Sleep paralysis is one of those terrifying experiences that sits in the thin veil between science and the supernatural, and countless people around the world have described how in those frozen moments when the mind wakes before the body, they have encountered things so chilling that no amount of rational explanation can erase the dread. And in exploring 3 unnerving sleep paralysis horror stories, we begin with the account of a young man who had just moved into a new apartment after college. A small, cheaply furnished studio where he worked long hours and often fell asleep late at night. He awoke one night unable to move his eyes darting around the dimly lit room, when suddenly a dark figure crawled out from the corner, not walking, but dragging itself across the floor on its elbows like something broken and unnatural. And with every inch it came closer he tried to scream, but no sound came out until it climbed up onto the bed and pressed its face near his, the reek of decay filling his nostrils before he blacked out. And the next morning he found scratches on his neck, though the door had been locked and no one could have come inside, leaving him rattled for weeks and never able to fall asleep without the light on again. The second story is that of a woman in her 30s who had battled insomnia most of her adult life and often described her dreams as more vivid than reality. But one episode changed everything. She woke in bed one dawn to find herself paralyzed, the early light filtering in through her blinds casting strange patterns on the walls, when a heavy weight pinned her chest, and she saw what looked like a shriveled old woman crouched on top of her, its eyes milky white and mouth grinning unnaturally wide, whispering in a language she could not understand. And as tears ran down her face, she felt bony fingers wrapped tightly around her wrists while the creature leaned close enough that she felt its icy breath against her ear. And when she finally jolted awake for real, the sensation of those skeletal hands lingered, leaving bruises in the shape of fingers that no doctor could explain, convincing her that what she experienced was not just a neurological trick, but something sinister that had crossed the threshold from nightmare into waking life. The third story is perhaps the most disturbing, involving a middle-aged father who had never even heard of sleep paralysis until it nearly drove him into madness. He began waking at precisely 3:15 a.m. every night, unable to move, and always seeing the same scene unfold. A group of shadowy figures standing at the foot of his bed, tall, faceless, and utterly still except for one who would slowly approach while the others remained in the background, the closer figure bending down as though studying him with invisible eyes, and then a high-pitched ringing sound would fill the room as his vision blurred and the shadow's hand reached toward his throat, squeezing tighter each night until he could barely breathe. And after weeks of these relentless encounters, he noticed that the family dog refused to enter his bedroom, whining and growling at something unseen in the corner where the shadows gathered, which left him questioning whether these beings were products of his brain misfiring or something truly malevolent that was feeding on his fear. And although he tried different sleep positions, therapy, and even medication, the attacks did not stop until he abandoned the house entirely, leaving behind not only his possessions but the sense of safety in his own skin. These 3 stories demonstrate why sleep paralysis is one of the most unnerving human experiences, because it blends the clinical with the inexplicable, the body's temporary state of immobility, with visions and sensations so real they leave physical and emotional scars. And while scientists may explain it as a quirk of REM sleep, the sheer terror and consistency of these encounters across cultures throughout history hint at something older, darker, and perhaps more real than we care to admit, making sleep paralysis not just a phenomenon of the brain, but a modern window into timeless fears of being watched, trapped, and tormented by forces beyond our comprehension, which is why those who have suffered through it speak with a trembling voice, knowing that to close their eyes and drift into slumber might once again mean opening the door to a world where shadows walk, whispers taunt, and nightmares cross into reality.